So Horimiya, I think after 9 weeks, it's pretty safe to say this is peak anime romance. You have the exploring of the kink world, you have love that will protect you in a violent fashion should your old high school bullies come in and she'll knock some sense into it. But ultimately, she's that type of person, and he's that type of person for her, that lets you appreciate the bad from your life because overcoming that, it allowed you to reach a point that is like true happiness. This show is amazing, and on one hand, it's sad that we don't have like 24 episodes or a nice 2 cour to just carry on into spring. But on the other hand, when we really take a step back, how much we've experienced in 9 weeks. Not only have we had high school bullies or middle school bullies, we've had old lost friends and newfound friends, all of the side casts, but we have this amazing relationship between Hori and Miyamura, and it feels like we've experienced, honestly, a lifetime with them, even though it's only been 9 weeks or 9 anime episodes. It's insane what the show's been able to do with such a short amount of time, without it feeling rushed. It feels like this is naturally how it could develop, and once you find that special person, it all just starts working out magically, and the pain from before is quickly forgotten. I think one of the most interesting aspects about this episode for me was honestly the whole bullying angle, because one of the things is that a lot of times when bad things do happen to you, those people, given a different set of circumstances, you probably could have easily found yourself being their friends, or honestly even being on the flip side, because especially when you grow up, it's very easy to pick on people or be picked on, and it almost feels like no matter which group you end up with, something bad's gonna happen to either you or someone else. But the interesting thing is how a lot of times the people that you really despise in the moment, in hindsight you look back and you realize things easily could have been different. And I really like how they handled Miyamura's bullies in this episode. They kind of got their ass handed to them in a pretty glorious fashion, but at the same time, there's certain aspects about the whole bullying angle that Miyamura really didn't have a lot of hostility towards many of these people. In fact, he probably wished he could have been friends with them. And the fact that one is actually so distraught. You know, there's this whole like bunny analogy that's going on where Miyamura is looking into an empty cage, and we learned that he actually blamed Miyamura for not feeding the bunnies and them all dying when really he was the one who forgot it. But Miyamura doesn't really have like this hostility in him that he wants to hurt people. Though we have seen his violent tendencies, those tend to be on people that he actually cares for. In the case of Hori, well, she enjoys getting slapped, or she enjoys just being dominated in public places. But in the case of some of his friends, yeah, sometimes they need a fist to the face just because of how they're acting. But a lot of the general people, he just doesn't do much around. But anyone who hurts those around him, that's when he gets really fired up for other people's sake. But we can see in this episode, he still has that tendency to kind of shrink down and feel bad about himself or just not say anything. But then that's where Hori comes in, and I like the idea of him saying, you know, he has someone who can get mad on his behalf. And that's exactly like one of the great things about a relationship is that, you know, you have someone who cares so much about how you feel that even if you aren't getting overly upset that someone said something bad about you, they're probably going to get pissed off that they had the nerve to say that, right? It's really interesting how they handled that. And I think, honestly, out of everything in this episode, my favorite part was just him, this one of his previous bullies, all things considered, trying to call him, meeting him up at his job, saying like, you know, I'm going to come back the other day and I'm going to get one of these cheesecakes. Oh, our tart's good. I want 2 of each. Pretty much saying like, you know, he wants to hang out with Miyamura and he feels bad. And it was just a really well-directed sequence where it's like, you know, people do a lot of shitty things growing up, and Miyamura and the way he perceives certain characters in this situation, he feels like, you know, at the end of the day, you can be friends with pretty much anyone, and that is true. I mean, from people that I was shitty to growing up, to people who were shitty to me growing up, many of which I ended up becoming friends with throughout my journey throughout school life. And as per most life, you know, depending on the schools you go to and where you go in your adult life, you part ways with those people as well. To make you feel bad, mad, sad, but then also sort of hopeful and optimistic, while sprinkling in some of the best comedy and honestly progressing of the relationship that we've seen today. Last week we had a lot of like kink and like dom sub sort of conversations and topics that were brought up. And in this episode, it just gets kind of like propelled even further. I love how you can definitely tell Miyamura does not get the same thrills that someone like Hori does out of the whole situation, but he cares so much for her that he's willing to do whatever it takes, and even goes the whole like, I gotta talk to the dad route, because the dad's not the typical, if you touch my daughter, I'll kill you. The dad's like, oh, is she preggers again? And you're thinking, my man, we know you're bullshitting, but this isn't the time or the place. We got some serious issues. And I like what he brings up, the fact that he simply says, like, maybe she wants the opposite of you, which pretty much is any, like, strong relationship, because why would you, in the moment, want to have the same thing over and over? You know, that's the whole point of, like, roleplay and things like that. So it's really interesting how she gets off on those things and how the anime doesn't, like, portray it in this super negative light. Really, it's the only anime that I've seen that's actually portrayed, like, kinks in this way without it feeling abusive, because generally when you have, like, those 50 Shades of Grey authors, they write it in a very distasteful way that the general housewives or the general blue-collar guys out there will be like, oh, that's just what it is, it's just abuse, when it's really built on trust and actually understanding your personal partner's boundaries and things like that. So it's great to see what they're able to do in this episode to really spice up the comedy, but also just show you that, you know, they really are finding their balance in their own life. And it's really interesting seeing it from, like, you know, a high school perspective when everything is fresh and new to them, and seeing, like, it would be great to have that second chord just to see, like, where their relationship would go in, like, their adult years. But then again, there's still time for that if they wanted to do a time skip or anything like that. But still, it's really great to see what they've been able to accomplish with this show so far, and how it really feels like they are, like, the perfect match, that even if not all their tastes overlap, in the case of Miyamura maybe not getting the same thrills that Hori does, he understands that it makes her happy, so he's willing to do that for her the same way that she's willing to do things that maybe she doesn't have all that much of an interest in, but knows that it makes him happy. It's great how this show understands that while the main relationship, Hori and Miyamura, is the most important thing, they give it time to function, but they also can sprinkle in those past aspects. We know Miyamura had a shitty life growing up, so why not reintroduce those characters now who are, some of them, still pretty big scumbags, and others who maybe are just been tagging along because they don't want to feel left out as well. And the fact that Miyamura is saying, you know, even the worst of the worst that treated him like trash, he could have seen himself being friends with them and maybe even still could in the future, because he's not the same kid he once was who's scared and afraid. He's really enjoying life. And because he has that self-confidence, he can probably put him in their place more so than usual. And if not, you know, his girlfriend will be right there for him. It was a great episode, beautifully directed, and I love the idea of how they were kind of able to portray the outside with that whole locker scene. I thought it was a really great touch to just show what life was really like for this guy and how he feels really bad. Just an overall flawless episode. And like I said, it's like, on one hand, it's sad that the show's almost over, but on the other hand, we've seen so much that I'd rather have it go out making you wish for more rather than lasting too long and making you say, you know, you kind of were playing your cards a little too much here, you're reusing the same cards, you probably should have wrapped up sooner rather than later. So it's one of those things that leave the viewers asking for more but not actually wanting that extra bit, because a lot of these shows drag it on for too long, but then there's Horimiya who just knocks it out of the park and knows what to do and when to call it quits. Let me know your thoughts and feelings down below. What did you think? And what was your personal favorite moment in the episode? If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.